Hi, Beth.
Hey.
Is your video still not working? Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, the video is not working because I'm driving.
Oh, okay. That's probably a good thing. The video is not working. Good morning, Chad.
Morning,
Hi,
morning.
Chad.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Hassan. So Chad is a bit of a celebrity. As I found out when I was in Greece, like everybody who came from Australia knew Chad. So
Awesome.
we are in the presence of. Hey, Hassan, are you interviewing or something?
Must be in a suit.
He looks good. Yes, you clean up nicely.
Coffee shop.
Are you connected with Monica Wheatley? Monica Wheat?
No, I haven't. I mean, I know Monica, but no, I haven't connected with her recently.
Oh, I feel there was a write-up about her. I just posted on the ESHIP Facebook page. So.
Okay.
Yeah, she's doing cool stuff. So.
No, she is. She's doing awesome stuff.
Yeah.
I know she posted something on Slack as well about Backstage Capital and some of the stuff that she's doing.
Cool. So, hey, Chad, when you get a chance, when it's morning, really morning for you, I'd love to connect with you and see if I can help Jessica and some of her work around Future Agro Challenge.
Yeah, this is really awesome what they've done up in the Tablelands there. She's doing really good. Yeah, anything we can do to help her out would be great.
Yeah, I think it's too large. I thought about it for the U.S. and we can talk offline about it, but it's a lot of this work, right? Sustainable. Trying to think of how we keep going without burnout, and I think that with your help, she could actually create an alliance and network as opposed to trying to do the whole thing on her own. So,
yeah, sounds
good. Anyway. Okay, so we'll talk. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, Hassan and Beth, which one of you is leading? Beth is driving, so I'm thinking that Hassan might be better at doing this, and you're going to need a scribe.
Yep. So let's see.
Let me see if I can grab the worksheet so everyone can follow.
I'm happy to help support Scribe.
Excellent.
Thanks,
okay,
Dave.
This is goal 7, right? It's all kind of blurring. Okay, thank you. It's all right. So, are we doing commenting capabilities? I have a feeling that comment is probably the best way, so the structure doesn't change. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. I guess we'll give people another minute or so.
Minute or two, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to put a link to the agenda in the
Yep,
chat?
I'm working on it. I'm going to get a commentable link so that you can help scribe. If I can get it up here. Sorry, having technical difficulties. Please stand by. Okay. All right. I'm gonna turn it over to Hassan so he can help lead.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. And so I think you all have access to the agenda, and we will just start off with a quick intro and then do some general updates and then talk about some of the things that the folks on the call are working on in their areas. So I am Hassan Bazi. I'm in Detroit, and I think we all know each other on the call. So if we can just go around real quick, just who you are and where you are based. Just a little bit about the work that you do so that when others actually watch this video, they can have a reference point about who's on the call. I know we all know each other, but so if we can, and I will go over, because she's next on my screen, back to Cecilia.
Okay, so I'm Cecilia Wessinger. I'm your ESHIP community activator in support of ecosystem building practitioners, all of you. And I'm here to support and make sure that the recording goes up on the dashboard and we dot our I's and cross our T's and help support you as best we can. And I will ping Beth.
Hey, everybody, it's Beth. I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania with the Innovation Collaborative, and I'll ping to Mary.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Colton. I'm a Borealis consultant with a small business grant writing business in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, wait, it's hard to hear you, Mary.
Oh, is it? Can you hear me at all?
A little
It's
bit.
very faint.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so I'm Mary Overby. I own Borealis Consulting. I'm a small business consulting business, ecosystem building business, and grant writing business and micro lender in Springfield, Missouri.
And then I guess you're going to
Oh,
Chad or Hassan?
we'll go to Chad.
Cool, thanks, Mary. So Chad Renando, working on supporting ecosystems in Australia through building collaborative bodies, mostly focused on regional areas and what the role of an innovation hub is, and also collective impact and backbone organizations, focusing a bit on that. And might pop back over to Hassan. I think everybody else had a bit of a say.
Yep. Looks like we have one more person that's calling in from an 815 area code.
Yep. Hi, that's Carol. That's me from Chicago. Sorry, I'm late.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Hassan. Is that you?
That is me. And what we're doing, Carol, is we're just going around introducing ourselves, where we're calling from, and just real quick, just a sentence or two about the work you do.
Okay, I'm Carol Abrahamson from outside of Chicago, and I've got 3 projects. I'm the founder of the Illinois Incubator Association. I'm also the founder of a group to organize the state presidents of all the other incubator associations in America, and there are 20 state associations right now. And then I'm also working on a national venture capital project to help venture money more easily cross state lines to go into all 50 states, largely from just California venture capitalists. That's it.
Cool, thank you. So I guess we can jump right into updates. Most of the folks that are on the call are familiar with this goal and have been on this call before. So there are 6 initiatives that have been prioritized under this goal. So anyone who's on the call, if there's any update that you have on some of the work that you're doing related to those initiatives. And I know on the last call, Carol, you had talked about wanting to reach out to folks to form a team around one of the initiatives. So we can, anyone who wants to kick off, go ahead.
This is Carol. Yeah, I was interested in joining, if there was one already formed, or forming 7.3 and 7.5. And so I emailed to all of the people, I sent separate emails to people from the hackathon who also showed interest in those same 2 initiatives, and I didn't get any response back. I think there were 12 or 13 names on each email that I sent. So I'm not aware that either of those have gotten going. I'm still interested, and I'm not quite sure what I could or should do to see if we can get a group formed if nobody else is doing the same thing.
So Carol, I'm looking at my email. This is Mary Overby. I'm looking at my email, and the only emails I see from you regarding initiatives are 4.6. So I don't think I got anything from you on, because I wasn't part of the hackathon. I had to leave early. I am definitely interested in 7.3. That is something that I would love to be involved in.
Cool.
7.5, I would have to look at a little bit more just to see if that's super in my wheelhouse. It probably is, but definitely 7.3. I'd love to start getting on a separate call with you and anybody else who wants to be involved and work on that. Has there been any work done on this prior? Just out of curiosity, like, is anybody focused and even got it started, or is all we have is what came out from the hackathon?
Hey, I'm driving. Could you clarify what 7.3 and 7.5 are?
Oh, sorry, ecosystem building, training, and certification, Beth, and then 7.5 is peer support networks.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm gonna take a slight pause and let Kristen introduce herself, because we get a chance to see Kristen's lovely face. I haven't seen you. So just for the recording, if you can tell, and everyone else who doesn't have the pleasure of knowing you, if you can tell us who you are and where you're calling in from, and maybe a sentence or two about what you do.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm just getting over a late summer cold here in Western Massachusetts. I work in Springfield, Mass, and for an organization that is a nonprofit called Valley Venture Mentors. And we are our resident ecosystem lead here in the region. So we're about 2 hours west of Boston, an hour north of Hartford, Connecticut, and just south of Vermont. So we cover from the Connecticut to Vermont border. We do completely free services to support entrepreneurs at all levels. We have an accelerator that we run, and in particular are facing sort of a variety of challenges in our ecosystem. We're trying to work really hard with our higher ed partners. That's one thing that we're doing. And, you know, I'm interested, I think, more in goal 6, but also I think goal 7 and 6 just are, they're like walk together, like peanut butter and jelly. So I figure, I don't know, for me, this might be the jelly call, but I'm interested in it. So it's not that I don't want to pitch in and help. I just feel like I might reserve some of my oomph for goal 6. Thank you for putting up with my voice. It's hay fever season.
Great, it's great to see you. We missed you in Madison last week.
I know.
So let me share for those of you who haven't been on any of the other calls, or just to give an update since we've shared the hackathon list. So the idea behind the hackathon that happened at the ESHIP Summit was simply a great exercise to get people thinking about collaborative efforts in working on these projects. There was no expectation or call to action for any of the work to move forward past the exercise that we did, but we understand that people have some energy and are motivated around working on some of these things. So what we did was we shared the project canvases. So canvases only have been shared without any contact information on both the dashboard and the Facebook page as an example of what project canvases look like. And then we shared with anybody who made a commitment on those boards the email addresses of the people that said, I want to lead, count me in, or keep me in the loop as far as that's concerned. The reason that it wasn't shared widely was because we wanted to make sure that the people who signed up and in wanting to be involved were the ones that were shared the information. And because the email addresses were entrusted to the foundation, there's a whole bunch of parameters and things that we have to be mindful of in not sharing the email addresses widely. That said, anyone is welcome to form a project team under whoever signed up, or to create new project teams. The best place to collaborate is probably the Slack channel, because Slack gives you a depth of conversation, and it's not a monthly thing like these calls. So people will have an opportunity to interact and form project teams. and they'll be able to do that outside of these calls. These calls are now more of a keeping people up to date, increasing visibility, giving people an opportunity to align and create relationships, build trust so that the collaboration and coordination can happen. And so the beginning of the calls, and I'm probably taking some stuff away from what Hassan was going to cover, so the beginning of the calls are basically just a quick update of anybody who's formed a project team, curious about a project team, to give anybody who's on the call a brief update of what's going on around the initiatives that they're passionate about. And then the rest of the call ideally would be around some peer learning, some opportunities to delve into this a little bit deeper, to talk about things that are going on in the community. And so I think a lot of the questions for those of you who are attending the calls is what you would like to see so that it gives you depth of understanding, knowledge, information, points of discussion, all those things in this meetup. So I think these are, there's some great resources here. I mean, Chad is a member of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, so he gets to see this happen on a countrywide and global scale of what sustainable work looks like. And I have a call set up with somebody from the University of Minnesota who's actually interested in creating some kind of coursework around ecosystem building as a field. So if as she gets introduced to the community, I'm going to encourage her to get on Slack and communicate. I want to be mindful again of people's energies and what they're passionate about before we kind of let the community loose on everything. So, you know, it's those things. So anyway, I will give it back to Hassan. We lost Beth. She's probably still driving around.
Hey, Cecilia, can I ask a question on that real quick? So is that, or what that person is working on aligned with 7.3 with that training and certification? Is that what you're talking about?
So from the email, and I've only had some email exchange from her. So bear with me, I'm going to pull it up and take a look at it, and I'll let you know what, if I can. She says something about creating a course, and I haven't touched base with her. She, one of the ESHIP, I mean the 1 Million Cups regional people connected us. So, so it is. Says ideas around exploring ideas to create a certificate in ecosystem building that's very hands-on, experiential for community members that wish to do so in their region. So, so I don't know if it's something that she's interested in doing on a wider frame as far as nationally and building a field, but it sounds like something, some kind of coursework. So I'm very happy to invite her to these calls. Like if that's something that you want to explore on a call like next month, as far as, so I want to keep it very specific. So these calls are not meant to be project calls. The projects themselves are something that are done outside of the calls and the information shared just to give visibility around the community. But if it's a discussion on how do you go about creating a certification, maybe we get some people that create coursework for universities and institutions and foundations or whatever, then maybe as a generic practice, it may be more aligned with the purpose of having a meetup. So this is basically like a meetup call. That's why we call them that, so that we can discuss this.
So, so would it be appropriate then, since Carol and I are going to be working on 7.3, which is directly aligned with that, would it be appropriate maybe for the four of us to have a call, like a planning call, once you've set something up with her, or do you want to keep that on your end? I think it would be good for Carol and I to include her on our project calls, if that's actually.
I think so too. At least the first one, to find out more about what she has in mind, how it might work, and whether she has resources she's bringing into this, or whether she's just getting started with an idea and hasn't started running down the road yet. Because I've developed certificate programs before for San Jose State, and it usually is a 3 to 4 year process, I find, in developing a certificate program from scratch for a university.
So I appreciate your eagerness and energy. I'm going to tell you that, those of us who've been on these calls for some time, all of you here, you're part of the community, you're integrally engaged, and for somebody who's new stepping into this is like drinking from a fire hose. So I really want to be mindful of letting her know that there are people that are interested in wanting to help and collaborate and all of that. At the same time, it's as we share with everybody else, it's follow your energy. So I can extend the invitation and let her know that things are going on, but I want to be mindful of that. So it's an invitation to collaborate. It really, 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 I cannot stress this enough, helps to get to know each other. The fact that Mary and Carol and Beth and Hassan and all of you have been on calls for months and months and months, and Kristen and Chad were together at the ESHIP Summit, so you had an opportunity to meet, is wonderful. You know each other and are comfortable in engaging.
So Celia, I'm just gonna throw in there. That's absolutely fine if you want to start the initial contact with her and see what her interest level is, and then just when you feel it's appropriate, pass her to the 7.3 project planning team, and we can get to know her there and see how we can collaborate. I would hate for her to be working on something separate, and then Carol and I working on something separate and be either duplicating or. But obviously you need to set up that relationship first, as you're saying.
All I'm going to do, because I'm not going to manage collaboration, so what I'm very happy to introduce her to the Slack channel and let her follow her energy to be engaged in the community, and then you are all welcome to talk and collaborate. So the whole
you just can't do an email between the three of us and say introductions.
I've not talked to her yet, Mary. I've not met the person.
Once you talk to her, like once you talk to her and figured it out, can you do that?
And if she's open to it, yes, I'm absolutely happy to engage if that's what she's open to.
Okay,
so,
that's all I was saying. That's all I was saying. Just if she is, then just connect her in with us, and then we can work on taking it from there and moving forward.
Okay, so I'm going to let Hassan and Beth have the call back. I just wanted to clarify all that sharing, and thanks, Chad, for your engagement and interest in getting involved as well.
Thank you, Cecilia. So I guess from what Cecilia shared, the best way for project teams to communicate and for all of us to communicate is via Slack. And is there anything that anyone on the call, or since there aren't any project teams that are formed around any of these initiatives, is there anything that anyone is aware of in your own region that aligns with these initiatives that's happening? Anything at all that you're aware of?
Well, Hassan, I have, it's not, let me back up. This is Carol. When I sent the email out about 7.5 interest to the people in the hackathon, I got a response from Avery, and then I got another one from David Hirsch that said, yeah, we've been working on a version of 7.5, but we don't like the version the hackathon's part of. So we've been going in our own direction. And so then they sent me a couple of emails giving more info. So I'm so glad Cecilia clarified that the hackathon was really meant to be an exercise and a way for people to engage and work with each other, but not necessarily determine future direction. So I've got these emails from Avery and David, and they're calling their effort 7.5, but it doesn't look like the 7.5 I'm familiar with. I'm a little confused about how to respond to either of them, and they say they've been working together on this, so I'm not quite sure if we need to have them in the loop or not. But it doesn't answer your question about what might be happening in my region, but it just is a kind of a background piece that I think at some point we need to, somebody needs to get clear about whether we're going to call their effort, which includes helping spouses, friends, colleagues know enough about ecosystem, for instance, ecosystems, to be able to be supportive of ecosystem builders in their families or their personal networks. So it has a tone to it that is sort of peer supported, but it is definitely more based on spouses and folks in people's households and having programs. So I'm not quite sure whether I should be falling in line behind their leadership and the direction they're taking, or whether we need somebody to think about whether that indeed belongs as part of 7.5 or whether it's something quite different and should have its own number. I kind of look to you guys to, help me out here. So I'm not quite sure, as we're looking to get 7.5 moving as well, whether, how to respond to their emails to me saying that this has been underway for some time and it's moving forward.
Carol.
Well, Carol, I think you're probably going to find that in the entire, whether it's your local ecosystem, the national ecosystem, the global ecosystem, there are probably various efforts that are separate from this that are related to all of these initiatives that may be happening on their own. There doesn't have to be just one effort. So there are things, and maybe they'll all fall in line at some point and come together. Maybe some things will remain separate, but I don't think everything has to be, because there are various initiatives. But when I say initiatives, I'm not talking about initiatives under this goal. There are probably things happening out there that are related to all of these things that may be happening on their own, separate and independent of this. They don't all have to come together. They may at some point come together, but that shouldn't stop you from working on any of the initiatives or anything that you feel, your energy is where your energy is at. Does that?
Great, that's helpful to hear. And Avery has indicated she does want to be involved in the 7.5 phone calls, but since, as far as I know, there's no other 7.5 interest besides theirs, so I haven't that in the months since she emailed me, or in the weeks that she emailed me.
These calls are a place for people to come together and talk about some of the things that they're working on. And as a result of these calls, you may become aware of things that are happening that you weren't aware of, and people that may have been working on things independent of each other may become aware of things and then form a team just by, connecting on the calls. Cecilia, is there anything that you think we should add to this? Or
Well, I've shared the that there's not just one solution. I think that the consensus from everybody that we've spoken to, including people at the foundation, is the only outlier to not having multiple project teams and multiple initiatives and multiple directions is probably the shared vision. So goal 3 is pretty specific in that, trying to create a mission and a vision and some kind of pledge or lexicon, when we talk about languaging, I think it's really important for us to really collaborate as a community together on that one thing. The rest of it looks very different. So like a storytelling repository, which is part of goal 4, has currently 5 different iterations. So Startup Champions has things that they share under the Startup Champions kind of label and moniker. Co-Starters has their intersection, so another way of sharing ecosystem builder stories. You've got Social Ventures, which focuses on social impact type stories that Annika runs. And then EB Hub, which is Jeff, Tyler, and Avery doing an ecosystem builder repository of stories that are shared. And then Yuval and Charlton are working on podcasts. So that one goal initiative looks very different in 5 different ways. So it's not to say that 7.3 has one solution. 7.3 can have 5 different solutions. They don't all have to be reflected on this phone call. The idea of sharing project briefs on this call is just so there's more visibility and opportunities to work in tandem, work in alignment, or to pivot and work in different directions because one is addressing one need and another is addressing a different need. So it's not to say that there's one solve for each of these projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just, I mean, is there a way though amongst that to be sure that there's not a duplication of effort? I thought these meetups, these monthly meetups were designed to, among other things, to avoid a bunch of people basically working on recreating the same wheel separately.
I don't think it's an avoid, Carol. I think it's visibility. So we have, you know, we hear a lot about people not being transparent, and I think it's not people not being transparent. It's not like they're hiding something. They're just not seeing what other people are doing. So those are the silos and duplicating effort. That doesn't mean that the point of sharing this stuff on these calls is so that there is greater visibility and coordination. So coordination doesn't mean doing the same thing. It means like not crashing into each other, because it's like traffic rules, right? There's no guarantee that you have to follow the traffic rules. It's maybe good practice to follow traffic rules so that you don't crash, but there's nothing to say that, you know, there are groups of people that are not part of the ESHIP community that are also working on this stuff. There's a whole opportunity to kind of work along. And I feel like Chad had something that he wanted to share, so I'm just going to turn it over to Chad before back to Hassan.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Cecile. This is great. This is like, it reminds me of a hackathon, right? You go into a hackathon where they say, here's our challenge, who wants to solve it? You get a room of 50, 100 people, you get like, you know, 10, 15 project teams all pitching, and you're going to have like 6, 7, 8 trying to solve something in a very similar way. And they all go off, and for whatever reason, they say, well, I don't want to work with you either because I kind of got my own thing and I want to try that. And the cool thing about that is 2 people trying to solve the same thing in slightly different ways will come up with something where they, you know, at the end of 3, 5, 10 weeks, they may come back and say, actually, we're going to take the best things that we all did on that pathway because it's similar in some ways, but maybe different. And so as we look globally, and you mentioned the Global Entrepreneurship Network, like this is a wicked problem. It's an emerging field. It's a complex situation, and the system is adapting to try and solve it in different ways. I mean, we've got nuances and everything. You know, we need to set an audit. What are all the people trying to solve this currently? What are all the opportunities for accreditation that universities and TAFEs and vocational education, and they're all coming up with different ways to do it? What's a summary of all the roles, you know, and position descriptions for each one, from community builders to facilitator to director to, and everybody calls it something different depending on the region that you're in. So all of these are different nuances that no single project or entity can address. And the opportunity, I guess, for us, and it's cool that these calls, again, as you said, provide a meta overview of visibility. But if any of us, I would guess, want to try and attack any one of those or see who's involved in any one of those, it's an opportunity to get in there. Like for me personally, I would love to be a part of something. It's either let's just do a global audit of who's doing something with any sort of robustness beyond just the one-off training course. Do we have a central repository for all position descriptions for what we're talking about? And until we do, I think either A, get behind somebody who's doing it, or B, we just get along with it and do it ourselves. And if somebody's already halfway down by the time we first release, great, we'll see if we can join forces after that point.
Ask a question about that. So if I have one of the reasons I've been holding off to have, so in my region, we're talking about a very informal peer network, and loosely we're calling ourselves NEEB, because that sounds groovy, and also it's New England, everybody but Boston. So it's like all of the non-Bostonians, you know, they're really not the hub. So we're like, if we get together in a few weeks, which we're all speaking at each other's conferences and doing all that good stuff, like some of the people are raising their hands to help. I'm introducing them to these goals because they've never been to ESHIP Summit. So A, I'm encouraging them to buy a ticket. B, then saying, well, what goal are they interested in, letting them know about these meetups as a way to plug in. But the first thing is that we could at least, since we're all going to get together, like if that's useful, just share all of our respective job descriptions and send them to someone. So if there's like a captain, I'm happy to do that in our first gathering, like just as a little contribution for whoever's leading that, if that's a helpful. So I figured from these calls, I might hear cues like, oh, that might be helpful. And if we already have it and it's an easy thing for one of us to provide, then maybe I can task somebody in the group with like sending that to the right person and just not necessarily running a project team, but like being a contributor to other people's project teams, if that makes sense. Or if that's helpful, or if it's not, we'll just get together and drink beer and wine.
Yeah, Kristen, if you want to raise your hand to be the recipient of position descriptions, I got a group on my file server that I've been collecting as I go. But we do need just somebody to raise their hand who has the capacity to start and say, look, here's 20 different ways to look at community manager. Here's 15 different ways to look at, innovation hub facilitator or what have you. So if that's something you want to do, I'm happy to support that.
Okay.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, and just one more quick thing. I might have a student in a few weeks. If we get our funding, she'll come back, and she's been working with me for 3 or 4 months and is like into this idea of ecosystem building. And so she's happy to do good research and work too. She's really nice.
Kristen, if you come to Springfield, Missouri instead of Massachusetts, I'll help you with the beer and wine. Just see.
That sounds really groovy, like a tour of all the Springfields. I like that.
Beth, I feel like you started something or had a discussion around some of that before.
Yeah, we developed, with Carol's help a few months ago, we developed a draft job description of, I think, Chad, what you would consider the ecosystem builder for the backbone support organization or function. So as we've all discussed, there are several iterations of ecosystem builder jobs. So if you have a repository begun and Kristen's willing to start being kind of the clearinghouse for that, that'd be phenomenal. And Kristen and
Hello?
Did we lose Beth? I think we lost Beth. She's so I know that you two has started something, maybe a Google Doc or something like that, where you just start sharing might be helpful. So I don't know, but until Beth comes back, Hassan, are you still around? I'm not sure, he's muted. Okay. It's all these technical difficulties. So it's.
I just assumed the zombie apocalypse, but we'll call it technical difficulties if we
We
can.
were hoping that the zombie apocalypse started in Australia, because you guys start the day. So actually, is it Vanuatu that starts the day? So
I thought it was because zombies couldn't swim. That's why you wanted it in Australia.
well, okay, that too, because
Just practical concerns. Yeah.
If you played Risk, like if you had Australia, you were golden the whole time. So, although
I thought we were the last repository, not the first.
no,
Now I'm sad.
I know. Well, I'm hoping that it's not the zombie apocalypse, because next month my kid's ending up in your neck of the woods. So, all right, Hassan, you're back. We're turning it back over to you. No zombie apocalypse in Detroit.
No zombie apocalypse. Actually, not for another probably 5 weeks when Halloween and Devil's Night happens. Beth, do you have anything that you'd like to share at
I
all,
think
or
we
that you
lost
want?
Beth.
We did. Okay.
So
So zombie apocalypse in Erie then. Are there, and I know one of the things that we talked about on the last call was recommendations for content for future calls, or inviting folks from even outside this network just to share resources and information. Does anybody have anyone or know of anyone that they would recommend as a speaker on these calls, or someone that could share something related to the initiatives that could help us along?
Yeah, Hassan, that's a really good point. Like one of the things I was looking at doing in Australia is having monthly calls like this for ecosystem builders, where we do get a speaker in related to this. Like Cecilia, you mentioned a whole bunch of people in this field, like when we got co-ventured and a few mob like that are doing these kind of things, and that might be a good way to address also some of the other things we're talking about, of people already doing this as part of their day job, as part of the kind of the reason their organization exists. Getting them in for the first 10, 15 minutes or so, and then hanging around for the rest, where they do a bit of a presentation to keep things moving along. And the other one I thought is, I have, as I've been on a few of these calls, thinking, do we just open it right up, do a few blog posts to get the word out there as far as thought leadership, put an open invitation to this thing, and just like, how big do we want to get this? There's people globally that would love to be a part of this. Do we start bringing them in and really just open this up to see how fast we can get it going?
So I know some of the people that I ran into around Greece were people at Impact Hub, and Lauren used to be part of Impact Hub, and that seems like an interesting organization. I know Philip Gaskin was there also. So the other thing that I've done, but unsuccessfully so far, is reached out to PMI, which is the Project Management Association. Because if we're talking about creating a field, and we always talk about ecosystem building in the same way we introduced the idea that 10 years ago there weren't project managers, and now there's accreditation, certification, training, job descriptions, and courses you can take in school. So trying to find somebody who was an early, not an early adopter, but probably like the people that helped build a scaffolding to create project management as a sustainable job, to try to engage them and say, what were the things that you did? The other people that might be interesting are people that have been around communities of the future. So COTF is are a bunch of people that have 20 years ago sat around, thought about ecosystem building, and now they're like, oh my gosh, I think we were actually onto something. So some of them have come to the ESHIP Summit, and there's a vibrant community online, and maybe those are interesting people. But like I said, this is your call. So if there's anybody that we can reach out to that makes sense, please let us know, and we're happy to have you back. Beth, anything to share, add, think about? Or I'm going to leave it up to Beth and Hassan.
Beth, do you have anything anything that you want to add?
I'm excited to get into conversations on meetups around, like Cecilia was talking about, other people that have done things that are similar to what we're trying to accomplish. And again, learning about what other folks are doing, whether it's through project management or other professions that we can identify that are relatively new in the world, and learn lessons from those. I was talking this afternoon to, I don't know if anyone has run into, maybe Chad, were you on the call with University of Michigan a couple weeks ago around, Dow Gines had pulled together about 50 plus entrepreneurs. And I got on the call today with Elizabeth Ezell, who she's going to speak at the UN here coming up pretty soon about she didn't call it ecosystem building, but the ecosystem around the silver tsunami type thing. So subjects like that we can all learn from and take from and apply to the things that we're trying to do here, I think is great. So the more we can put our thinking caps on around that, that's awesome. And then the project stuff is going to happen over here, right, on the project calls and communications outside of these. But I really want to see this become a kind of a learning venue through these meetups if we can.
Just a thought on that. Cybersecurity is one example I can think of that has been in the recent past doing a lot of certificates and professionalization around that particular line of work. I know in the New England region, a lot of colleges now have certificates or offering them through either executive education programs or continuing ed or a degree program. So I'm happy to reach out to a smaller college in the area who just started a degree program and find out if they can, if that's a useful example, plug us in with people who help develop it and understand their learning journey a little bit.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, Beth, you raise a good point in regards to the kind of the UN where a lot of this stuff sits. I reflect on goal 5, which is around the metrics, and thinking like the UN has a repository for metrics around tourism, for example, but there doesn't exist anything for entrepreneurship. And I think like ultimately that's where this stuff goes. We start to standardize, we start to get some credibility, and then either like a peak body or it goes into like a UN type thing where we say, okay, this is the definitive. And so the work that we do here, at best, I think it's not necessarily being and creating that body. It's creating the body of work that eventually moves into something bigger than this. So identifying one, like other people that have been doing it, like mentioned Communities of the Future or other technology type folks areas like cybersecurity, as well as just scouting around to say, well, what would a home for this look like? And that may not show up until we just open source and publish online and say, here's every iteration of community manager we could find, until somebody comes along and says, hey, you can actually do that with this, something we hadn't thought of. So part of this whole process, I guess what I'm rambling on about is saying eventually can we get, we do the work, we get the stuff together, but then also just ship, using the startup term, ship as frequently and as early as we can to release things out in the wild. To find, and what that does, it uncovers other people that are doing it. So what does shipping look like for this kind of stuff as well? It's just a thought that I have.
Chad, you were on the call when Scott Gillespie was on. He's somebody who's been at it for some time, yes? Wasn't he in Australia for a little bit? And I mean, Victor knows him.
Yeah.
You mentioned him being on the calls, and I wonder if he's now teaching at NYU. And he was one of the people that have been thinking about ecosystem building for a decade or two, kind of thing, right? Am I right in that?
Yeah.
So maybe if there's an interest in inviting him back to actually share some of his work, and whatever he is teaching at NYU would be really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the last call, I think Scott talked about collecting. He was talking about the first step was collecting best practices. If I recall, I think that was one of the things that he talked about as a first step in all of the initiatives under Goal 7.
He also said something interesting about advocating for, what did he say? I'd have to go back and listen to the call again, but he said that it's the whole goal is to impact change for someone. Like what he sees ecosystem building as is to be the change shifter, the catalyst for which some action happens in benefit of someone else. So that would be an interesting conversation to have him expound on that. But I know I wrote the note down somewhere in one of my many notebooks.
Another person or another angle to consider for future learning or future speakers Cecilia, is there anybody from the Mayor's Association that you guys at Kaufman have been so involved with through having joint ESHIP conferences with them? Is there anybody in that world that we should be tapping into or inviting to share stories or whatever, that's kind of the leading edge of convergence of where that world meets what might be our future world?
So, couple of, I mean, if you're talking about mayors in particular, it's challenging to get a mayor on a call, but economic development people or people on their staff may be a little bit easier. Did you meet Skylar last week? Who supports?
I did in York, Pennsylvania. Yes, I did at SCN. Mm-hmm.
Right. So he was at the ESHIP Summit. He's basically an ecosystem builder for the city of York, and that's a position that was started particularly to help support the ecosystem. I know Beth's been engaged with the people at York as well, so he might be an interesting person to have, and he's in the community. But that's a really great suggestion. I think the goal is to get people in government, policymakers, economic development people involved. It's hard to get people who look at this as the lens of what the evolution is. So it's important to have people that like Dell who straddle both spheres and help translate that message, because otherwise SME, economic development people don't necessarily recognize that this is the evolution, right? So
I may be able to connect in the next. I'm connecting up with the Illinois State City Managers Association, and so by next month's call, I might have some thoughts about whether there's anybody from that group who seems to be in tune or starting to think about some of these same things that might have something to offer as an educational resource for these monthly calls as we go forward. So I'll report back to you next month after I've talked to the folks at the Illinois State Group.
Right, and I would encourage everyone to maybe add on comments on the agenda, that if there are some resources and that would help Hassan and Beth kind of help curate some of this, and then if I need to or the ESHIP team needs to engage or collaborate or reach out to people, please let us know.
Hey guys, I know we're getting close to the end and you guys need to wrap up. I was looking back up at the at the different 7.6, the ecosystem building book list. Do we have anybody leading that project team yet?
I believe that the book list is alive and living on the Ecosystem Builders Hub, EV Builders Hub. I think Jeff Bennett probably is managing that, but I'm not sure. Celia or Hassan, do you know?
Yeah, I'd have to check. I've seen the list, and I don't recall exactly where it's housed, but there is a list that's compiled. But we can look into that.
I don't mind reaching out to Jeff. I can do that. I'll shoot him an email and see if he has it. He sits on these calls as well, right?
Yeah, I know this is writing on EV Builders Hub. Or what's the actual website? Is it EV Builders?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The list is there. I just don't know who's taking responsibility for making sure that everyone knows. If you've got a good ecosystem building book that you want to recommend, go to Jeff or whoever it is. I'm not.
Okay.
Is there anything else that people are interested in learning about when it comes to sustaining this work besides what we've already kind of listed here? burnout avoidance tips, those types of things might be interesting.
Is there a reason that this field, to answer your question about burnouts in particular, Beth, is there a reason in this field that the thought is that burnout may be a more serious issue than other fields?
I don't know the answer. I've not been a part of an emerging profession before, and I feel honored and blessed to be part of this. But I do know just from personal experience, many of us are in our markets alone and trying to push a really big boulder up a really steep cliff. And if I didn't have this community to be a part of, I probably would have crashed and burned a while ago. So until I'm guessing in project management, there was probably similar experiences there. But until we have global awareness and general consensus that this function of ecosystem building is important for our communities to thrive, it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, Beth, you raise a good point. And one of the differences with project management is it was driven by a for-profit model, in that, you know, poorly run projects cost big companies lots of money, and so people were paying for project managers, and so they need to be accredited in some way, standardized. Same thing with the quality profession. Whereas with ecosystem building, it's typically not legitimized. It's off to the side. People think it falls. It's an aspect of the community development portfolio that's often overlooked. You know, you have these not-for-profit, low-funded entities trying to create bazillion-dollar unicorns, and trying to help entrepreneurs. And so, you know, that combination of an emerging profession, lack of clarification and definition, and poor funding, and we get burnout. So the question is whether, or question I have is whether the particular symptom of burnout is something we want to look at, in addition to the contributors to it, which is lack of clarification around roles, lack of universal support, lack of metrics to measure the outcomes, which kind of tie into a lot of the other areas as well. If burnout and individual mental health of ecosystem leaders doesn't sit anywhere else, is goal 7 the place where it lives?
So maybe an industrial psychologist type person might be able to offer some content that we could then build on regarding helping to avoid burnout or to deal with it once the symptoms start showing up.
Yes? Just fun fact, you have a resident IO psychologist here. That is who I am and what my training is, but we did apply to open inclusion this time. Of course, you know, we're nowhere near the top of the funding bucket, but we have some ideas, and actually one was piloted, I participated in, called By Good Startups, and it was really fantastic through SCN. So I think that model could be expounded upon and used. And the only other point I would make from a psychologist perspective is, and this isn't unique to this field, but nonprofits in general, there's sort of a, how should I say this, like the people working in the nonprofit adopt some of the symptoms that their clients experience in a daily life. So when I work with refugees, the sense of displacement and trauma transitions often to the staff. So we trained around that. And I think maybe if we work with entrepreneurs and startups where there's a lot of fragility and churn, we as ecosystem builders may experience the same thing in our respective organizations. So part of it is working at an awareness level too of the mirroring effect that can happen with the helpers to the people that we serve. So I do think there's a lot of interesting work to be done, but you know, funding, obviously, I think doing it as a peer support network through that is really a great way, and having some curriculum that might be offered pro bono from like this Good Startups curriculum, that was a really effective way, and now we're following on with some peer support. None of it has to be funded, it's just each other connecting through that lens that we had. So I would love to see that continue. If there's another pilot, I would promote and help people participate. I do think that it belongs under peer support networks because it's a low-cost, effective way to deliver some work with each other. So I'm happy to connect you with the guy who ran our cohort. He did a wonderful job.
Great.
Is ecosystem leader mental health, individual support, Is that a topic that lives under any of the goals? And if it doesn't, is there a case for it to be added to the current goal 7?
I agree that it would fit very nicely under 7.5. I think that's a really good place for it.
Cecilia, do you know if it lives in any of the other goals? Are you aware?
Not that I know of, and I think that maybe in this instance, it might be good to start under 7.5, and then if it seems like it needs to shift off, and like pivot in, that may make sense too, so that whoever's working on 7.5 is also kind of infused, but that sounds like we can start there and move sideways, right? So whoever's, I think the IO psych thing is spot on. That sounds great, and so I'm really excited to hear what happens. I'm going to be mindful of this call. If you want to keep going, that's great. I've got to jump on another call, so I appreciate all your energy, and I can turn this over to somebody else, or we can.
I also have to jump off. So I want to thank everyone being a new person on the call for welcoming me and helping me jump right in. That's great. And also, Cecilia, happy birthday to the boss.
Thank you. Yes, I have my Springsteen shirt on, right?
I know. I figured you would be celebrating today, so.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I'm sorry I have to jump off, and I appreciate all of you. I'm psyched to help in whatever little way I can. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Hassan, you're a boss now.
Listen,
I'll see you later.
Thank you, Cecilia. So I'm going to have to jump off pretty soon, too. I've got another meeting that's about to start. So thanks, everyone. Is there any final thoughts? Anyone?
I actually wanted to respond to something on Beth's question on something that we might want to look at for sustainability. I would really like to look into funding sustainability and how to create that within communities. So like which organization within each community is the best place to house it at so that they can create a sustainable position. I know that's probably 7.1, you're assuming?
Yep.
But I would definitely,
yeah,
is anybody on that right now, on that project management?
I think that's, and I have to check, I think that's the one that we've probably talked the least about, but that's one that we probably should be talking about. So.
Okay.
I just assumed, do we know of some sustainable funding models?
I think that's the initial structure, would probably be looking and seeing what's out there and what communities are doing. That may come from maybe build our book list and seeing if there are any books that we have on that list already that discuss sustainable funding for it. But I don't know. It would just definitely be some research. I'd be happy to start doing some research on it and seeing what all's out there. And then if anybody else wants to start jumping on project calls with me for 7.1, we can collaborate.
I see everything. I want to so bad, but I, didn't time to get to it.
You have a zillion hours in a day. I don't know why you can't be on all of them. I will. Okay, so then if you guys want to put me as project lead for 7.1, that's fine. And then if anybody else wants to, once I start getting some stuff together, we can start having calls, or if anybody wants to just jump on one with me. Any takers? Your takers? No? Everybody loves funding.
If the timing works, I certainly will. I just find myself overcommitting. This is super important to me.
You're on mute, Hassan.
Is there anybody from the hackathon you might want to approach and let them know that 7.1 is getting organized in case they have a particular interest in helping?
Who all did the hackathon for 7.1?
That link would have been in the last, I think the last newsletter we got from Kaufman would have been a week or two ago.
So is it up on it's up on the beta?
Is it on the dashboard, Hassan? You were on there today, weren't you?
I think
for
Cecilia said
7.1,
the email addresses were suppressed from the dashboard because they're not considered publicly shareable. So I think she's mentioned the Canvas would be there, but not the people side of it.
Right. So on the Slack, go under goal number 7, right? Great. So it's up
yeah, I
to,
didn't see anything under there for 7.1.
okay.
Okay, I'll reach out to Celia then and see if it's available, and just start taking the lead on that, and then we'll go from there.
And so, and Mary, is Mary still on?
That's
Mary?
me. Mm-hmm.
Do you want the two of us offline through whatever means, either email or Slack, to schedule our first 7.3 conversation?
Yes, and Chad is going to be on that as well. Chad signed on, and it's written in blood, so otherwise known as in the chat and in the minutes. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
let me know when.
Chad, do we have your email? Or do you just want to do, Carol, why don't you just do a Slack conversation between the three of us?
To get a call scheduled? Sure, I'll do it. And is there anybody in this call who's interested in 7.5? Or should I just round up with Avery and David and the folks they've been working with on their version of 7.5?
So Kristen was talking about 7.5, the peer support networks, and putting the mental health and burnout component under that. So she might be interested in being on that, but I would, if it were me, I would start with Avery and who else was it you said was on it?
Okay. David Hirsch, and see if they're yet doing regular calls or whether they have anything scheduled that I and anybody else can join up with, so that we might have a progress report to make at next month's Goal 7 meetup call.
So goal 4 is connected networks, right?
Say that
Goal
again,
4.
Beth?
Yes.
Goal 4 is connected networks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around why we have it here and there. So back to the earlier conversation about what Avery and David are doing and what we're talking about through, peer support networks in support of sustainable work. Maybe those are two different projects, but they're related, so they should stay in getting some visibility to each other. But I don't see a reason why the peer support networks can't, again, be in the loop on what Avery and David are doing, but do your thing too, with a stronger focus on Goal 7 versus Goal 4. Not to throw a wrench or confusion into things.
So is it Goal 4.6? I don't have a goal number 4, the Goal 4 items in front of me at this moment.
Goal 4 is connected networks. So it's back to what Celia and Hassan were mentioning earlier in chat. It's about, go where your energy is. And if you're interested in talking about peer support networks in the light of burnout aversion and mental health, then that more aligns with sustainability in Goal 7, where connected networks under Goal 4 is Goal 4, and it's related but not the same. So we can, again, go where the energy is and don't try to put a square peg in a round hole.
Beth, are you good to take it from here? I have to head out for my next meeting, so I'm going to have to jump.
Yeah, I got to run as well.
I think we all do. But anything else for the good of the order, and then the notes will be on the dashboard, and we'll work to plan on curating something for next fall.
Great, thank you.
Have a good
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
All right. See you guys.
Leading.
Thank you, guys.